I wanted to start by asking you, what are the signs a person can look for when they're struggling with their emotional health?
So isolation is a factor of anxiety or depression. If an individual feels that they don't want to be with people, or if they may feel drained by people or just tired, emotional health, emotional well-being is actually biopsychosocial, and it can show up in a number of ways.
Low vitamin D levels are the cause of some mental issues too, I think. When your D levels are low, I think depression rates are higher.
I also think there is this stigma against mental health in certain areas that I don't tell anybody my business, and what happens in this home stays in this home.
Emotional health. We don't always address it, and neglecting it can really take its toll on our well being. We're going to talk about that today. Our guest is a licensed clinical mental health counselor and national board certified counselor, Dr. Ashley Gilmore. Ashley, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you making the time. And I wanted to start by asking you, what are the signs a person can look for when they're struggling with their emotional health? And when is it time to get professional help? Um, you obviously see this a lot in your practice. This is what you do all day. Talk about that with us.
Yeah, so emotional health can come in a lot of different factors. Emotional health is actually biopsychosocial, and so it impacts how you show up in your personal life, your social life, your professional life, your spiritual life. And so a big factor can be isolation. So isolation is a factor of anxiety or depression. If an individual feels that they don't want to be with people, or if they may feel drained by people or just tired. So, isolation is a big factor. For some people, anxiety and over worrying, overthinking, those are two big symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder. And so, if an individual may be afraid of doing something because there's this fear that something could happen, that's a factor to it too. It can also be in relationships. I work a lot with couples. If there's a disconnect in some capacity, it could be, the disconnect of physical intimacy, or a lack of communication. And so emotional health, emotional well-being is actually biopsychosocial, and it can show up in a number of ways.
Do you think that anxiety, like social anxiety, is something that's more prevalent today because younger generations are just on screens and they're not interacting the way I don't know your age. I mean, you're
Yeah.
probably younger than me, but I always find myself saying this in different conversations on this
Yeah.
platform, but I can remember a day when I wasn't looking at a screen. It's
Yep.
been many, many years, but,
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I wasn't looking at screens. I was
No.
outside, I was
Hmm.
interacting with people
Hmm.
all day long,
Hmm.
every day.
Hmm.
So, do you feel like that's lost today with, like, younger generations, and that's leading to a lot of social anxieties when they are forced to interact with people?
Yeah, absolutely. I also think COVID did not help. I think the 9 months to 9 to 18 months that people were isolated, or kind of siloed did not help. But I do significantly agree that screens are a big part of that. I'm old enough to know when you had to be home when the streetlights came on, and my mom
Okay.
didn't know where I was, but I just
You
had
don't look it,
to.
so that's why
Thank
I
you.
didn't
Thank you.
assume.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I think, and I have children, and so my husband and I are really cognizant of when and how long they're on screen time. We have athletes, and so we notice also that when they're on the screens a lot, it impacts how they see themselves, how they show up in their sports, in their relationships. So I do think for the younger generation, screens are a big part of that, and it limits how they talk to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's increased the busyness of life too,
Oh,
because we're
absolutely.
always connected, like, work-wise, right? Like, I'm checking different things on my phone business-wise, sometimes up to 12, 13 hours a day just because that's, it's like my virtual office, right? That's for most of us. So, um how do you think busyness has changed our mental health? Like, I have some friends that are retired and, I not a lot of them, but a few, and, I tell them I envy them. It's ironic because they seem busier than me. Every time I was just telling one of them the other day, like, every time I call him, he doesn't answer his phone, and I'm like, "Where are you? I know you're not doing anything, so where are you?" Right? I don't
Yeah.
get that. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's another conversation.
Yeah.
I hope he's listening right now because he'll have a laugh.
And it seems
But
that they practice a healthy emotional well-being.
yeah, exactly. I guess so. I
Yeah.
guess so. But I mean, like, how do you think busyness plays into that? We're in a corporate world. We're in a business environment now
Mhm.
where I just feel like there's more demands on people. Like
Yes.
I grew up in a blue collar family where my dad punched out at 5 o'clock
Mhm.
and he didn't have to think about work until
Mhm.
the next morning.
Yep.
But everyone's taking their work home with them. Everyone's working later hours. I'm
Mhm.
always hearing stories of bosses that are very demanding of people's
Yeah.
time
Yep.
and wanting answers at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at
Mhm.
night when
Mhm.
people should be winding down.
Yep.
What do you think is do you think that's driving more mental health issues with people?
I do. I think that there has to be a boundary set. I think again, there's this plus and this minus, or this pro and con to working from home,
Mhm.
and that people feel like because I'm at home, I can work anytime.
Yeah.
I also think that a lot of companies or a lot of individuals, I do have clients who actually work on different time zones. And so it seems that at 9 o'clock in the morning, when many of us may be in our office or in sessions, that at 6 o'clock in California, they're just getting up. And so, sometimes people's workday doesn't start until later. And so it seems like they're working later. I also have clients who have a lot of their bosses are in different continents. And so the time difference, again, is 8 hours off. So they're working at 10 o'clock at night because it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, in Europe or somewhere. So I do think that because there's this work from home phenomenon that a lot of us enjoy, there's also a distance and boundary setting around time because we're working on different time zones, we're at home, so there's a different type of flexibility. And so I think that there is this constant need to be available because I'm not physically present. And I think that that's where the boundary setting can get disjointed in corporate America. I work from home, and so it's a little easier for me to have some flexibility from the day. My husband does not. And he's a manager of people, and so he feels like he always has to be on. I get to take a nap during the day sometimes. He does not. And so our emotional well-being, it can sometimes be off because he's more tired than I am by 8 o'clock at night. And so I do think that work can stay or should stay in at work, but I also think work can be defined differently. And I think sometimes that may make a difference too.
How hard do you think it is or how hard have you found it to get people to set those boundaries? Like clients that you work with, patients,
Yeah.
is it an issue? Do they know how to make those adjustments or is it very challenging?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think so I'm a little rebel. And so at this point I'm like, what are they gonna do? Fire you? And then that could be a possibility. So I
Yeah,
have
right.
to be cognizant of how I encourage people to set boundaries.
You're
What I am
self-employed, you can roll to the beat of your own drum, right?
exactly.
Not everybody can do that.
Exactly. And so I have to be mindful of that. So what I've gotten better at is asking people, what do you need in your life first, and then create priorities around that. And
Mhm.
then you can speak to your supervisor or manager around that. So if you know that it's hard for you to get up in the morning, maybe ask for a later time to start to your day. I can work from
Mhm.
10 to 7 because my children may not need me at this late hour. Maybe I have
Yeah.
a separate parent or something that can help with that. It's hard for me to be at work at 8 o'clock. So figuring out what the individual needs in order to communicate that to their boss or
Mhm.
supervisor is actually the first way to set the boundary. If you don't know what you need, it's hard to create a boundary around.
Yeah, and, like we were kind of alluding to earlier when we were kidding around, but maybe it's time for another job too. Like, if you just don't have a boss that's understanding. I remember one job I got hired on, and I've worked for multiple bosses in my life, but one of the jobs, the last like day job I had, which was many years ago, when the boss hired me, he had kids and I was a new dad. And he was so understanding of having a newborn at home, and he was so flexible with me, and he gave me a lot of, like, wiggle room when if I had a sick child at home or something like that. He was a big family guy, and that made such a difference because I hear stories of, people who have supervisors, bosses that don't have kids, or they have, like, just destroyed personal lives, so they don't care about their families, right? Because that's out there too. And then how, that is so hard to navigate when you don't have that understanding boss because families do demand your attention, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think I actually have quite, it's always interesting that I always have a client when I'm, having one of these talks or something, I always can have a story. I actually have a client, their supervisor, her husband died a couple years ago, and she's an empty nester. And so she spends so much time at work. Her demand or her thought is that people under her should do the same thing. And my
Right.
client is like, I'm not going to be here 12 hours a day. You cannot
Yeah.
call me at 7 o'clock and ask me to do things. And so I do think that when management doesn't have their priorities set or they don't have healthy boundaries, it then impacts their staff.
Yeah, it's like a trickle down
It's a
effect.
trickle down effect. Yep,
Wow.
absolutely. It's
Yeah,
top
that's not
heavy.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I know you are, as am I, big on making time for self care, self
absolutely.
maintenance. You
Yep,
recommend 1 hour a day,
yep,
and I couldn't agree more. Sometimes I take more than that.
yep.
Talk about the importance of that ritual in our overall well being.
Oh my goodness, it's so significant. It's hard to take an hour of the day, and so you have to make
Yeah.
it a priority. What I've learned in my own personal life is that if I don't work out, I am not a nice person, or I just feel down throughout the day. And sometimes it's even I'm not going to work out, but I will stay in the bed an hour longer, or I will take a nap sometime
Yeah.
throughout the day. So what I've learned too, and I encourage this with my clients, is that self care again is the way for you to set a boundary for yourself. No is a complete sentence. And if this is something that's important to me, I make that a priority and everything else gets a no in this moment. Doesn't mean I'm rejecting the person or the idea. It's just not at this moment. Is it feasible for me? And
Mhm.
so if an individual is able to take an hour of self-care a day, it creates the opportunity for them to be centered within themselves and
Yeah.
able to be able to focus more throughout the day. And so when we don't have that time, and you can, I'm not sure how it works for you, but how distant are you with yourself and other people? How short are you? How
Yeah.
discombobulated do you feel? And so if you take that hour for yourself, you're able to kind of center, kind of guide yourself throughout the day, even if
Mhm.
it's in the middle of the day. If the morning was rough, the afternoon doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
But it's so important. I post every week about Self Care Sunday because I think Sunday is such a sacred day. Whether you are a Christian or spiritual,
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily have to be where you're going somewhere, but it's also a reset. The week is ending, the week is beginning in some capacities. How do I recenter myself so that as I enter into whatever is next, I'm one with myself and I'm able to manage or tackle what's coming ahead of me. So self care is
Yeah.
absolutely important.
I couldn't agree more. For me, it's sunlight. I try to get
Yes.
sunlight every day. I know not everybody can do that. I know we
Yep.
have listeners that are at higher latitudes where
Yep.
it's cold in January.
Yep. Yep.
But for me, it's just I try to get it as much as I can.
Absolutely.
I feel so much better when I
Hmm.
get some sunlight. It's
Hmm.
a full, like you said, a reset.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is. It's
Yep.
nature's reset. I think
Yes.
we're supposed to spend more time in the sun than we actually do,
Absolutely.
and you can tell by the results and how you
Yep.
feel.
Yep.
And I think like uh, low vitamin D levels are the cause of some mental issues too, I think. When your D
Absolutely.
levels are low, I think
Yes.
depression rates are higher.
Absolutely.
Have you
Yeah.
have you noticed that with
Yes.
do you run labs with patients or
So
with
I don't
clients?
so I don't run labs, but I do what's called a PHQ-9, and that's a
Yeah.
depression scale. It's
Mhm.
usually higher from October through March when fall and winter months are occurring. So
Right.
many people have what's called seasonal affective disorder. When it's colder, the days are shorter, there's less sun, you can't get outside more. And so
Mhm.
during the winter months, the PHQ-9 scales are actually higher for individuals because of the lack of sun or being able to be outside.
So what do you recommend to those patients? Do you think they
Yeah.
should supplement with vitamin D or?
So absolutely, I do think D3 is a
Mhm.
really good way to supplement. But actually going outside even in the winter is helpful.
Mhm.
And so the 12 o'clock hour, many of us should be eating or taking
Yeah.
some sort of time in the middle of the day. So I
Yeah.
actually tell people, take a walk around the building if you're at work, or go stand in the sun for 15 minutes. Set a timer, walk up and down the street if you're working from home. It's cold, but I actually encourage individuals to still go outside during the winter months.
Mhm.
That 15-minute jolt, even if it's cold outside, can
Yeah.
help recenter you. So I still
Yeah.
recommend it in the winter.
Yeah, and it's still natural light, right? You're still getting out
Absolutely.
of artificial light
Absolutely.
and
Yep.
light from
Absolutely.
screens, and you're out getting
Absolutely.
full spectrum light.
All of it. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah,
I wanna circle back to anxiety,
yeah.
Ashley. I wanna
Sure.
talk about it some more.
Mhm,
Obviously, you see a lot of it in your practice today.
mhm.
Why is it so hard for people to manage it?
Yeah, usually anxiety is centered around the things I can't control. And so we are have a heightened worry or fear because we can't control it. So a big part of that is grief, or loss. We don't know when death is occurring, and so there's this anxiety around death, and the lack of control that it has. A lot of people also focus on what's to come as opposed to where you are right now. And so we're worried about what's next, or what could happen, or if I'm in a good place, the shoe falling, and so we're not able to stay in the present. And so I often tell individuals who are anxious to actually breathe. So there's an exercise called 4-6-8, where you inhale and exhale for 4 seconds, and you repeat it for 6 and 8 seconds. And again, what it does is it recenters you, and it actually calms your heart rate down, and then brings the endorphins in your brain down, so that you're able to center yourself and focus on what's happening right now. But a lot of anxiety is worry about the lack of control that we have around certain things and people.
Yeah. You know what? I gotta show you something.
Okay.
You're talking about breathing, and I gotta pop my headphones off.
Okay.
This is podcasting. This is live, people. So give me a second. I want to show you something because I want to
Okay.
show you something that's been very helpful for me.
Okay.
This is live, unediting podcasting at
Oh,
its
I
best.
love that for us.
So yeah, for sure. This I got this from a good friend of mine, Dr. Ingo Mon, who's been on the platform before. He's a
Okay.
holistic dentist, and this is called a relaxator.
Ah,
And this thing is awesome,
a
Ashley. This thing is awesome. Yeah, you
relaxator.
can buy it on Amazon. I think it's like 30 bucks.
Okay.
And Ingo put me on to this. Big shout out to Ingo. Thank you, brother.
Okay.
And this thing is awesome. So what it does is it creates you can set it like when you turn and we're not sponsored by Relaxator. This is
Okay.
not a
Okay.
commercial,
You
you
may need
know.
to,
Yeah,
reach
if you
out to
guys are
them.
interested, this is not
Yep.
the first time this has come up. But you can see it's like a whistle. If I can
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
my
Yep. Yep. I
there we
can see
go.
it. Yep.
Yeah, so you can set what you do is you breathe in through your nose and then you exhale through your mouth with this. And you can set
Mm.
the resistance level of how hard it is to exhale. So it controls the rate of your breath.
Look at
And when you're
that.
having a stressful day, it can knock your blood pressure down in like 5
Wow.
minutes. I've done it. I've had elevated blood pressure on a stressful day. I've done 10 minutes of this and I came down from like I was like I can't remember the number now, and I was like probably like 130 over 85 or something like that. Not
Wow.
astronomically high, but
Okay.
high.
But it was
Stress
on.
related. I don't have chronic high blood pressure. It's
Yep.
just I was
Okay.
having a bad day and I thought,
Okay.
well,
Hmm.
let me try this. And then I brought it down to like it was like 118 over 75. It was unreal. And it
Wow.
even brought my heart rate down. Like
Wow.
this thing is awesome.
I write
So
it
you
down.
could what's that?
I wrote it down.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
do this on your own, like, you don't need this, you could just
Yep.
control the
Yep.
pace of your breath,
Yep. Yep.
or even do, like, a resistance where you almost like you're whistling, like,
Oh
so there's
yeah.
not as much air coming out, so it slows
Mhm.
down the exhale,
Mhm.
but if
Mhm.
you control the rate of your breathing,
Yeah.
which is what you were touching on, it's
Yeah.
unreal
Yeah.
the physiological changes that can happen in minutes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just from taking deep
Yeah.
breaths. We underestimate breathing.
Yeah, we
Uh,
do, and
we
we
do
don't breathe well, like, we don't breathe properly day
at
to
all.
day, like,
At
we're
all.
always breathing shallow,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
I heard there's monks somewhere, like, in Tibet or something that practice, like, full breathing 24
Yes.
hours a day,
Yes.
and you're in such a
Yes.
calmer state when you do that, and I'm terrible
Absolutely.
at that, but
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
unreal how much,
Yeah.
like, breath work is really a thing.
Yes, I do
you know?
Pilates, about
Cool.
2 to 3 times a week, and before we get into the workout, part of that is kind of breathing and centering your entire body, not just your stomach or your core, but your
Mhm.
brain and even to your toes. So it's called a body scan, and it's such a good way to kind of start the exercise. I immediately feel 10 times better when I walk into Pilates. I do other exercise, but Pilates is
Mhm.
just a different type of recentering, and the breathing work is just amazing.
So are you just breathing in that initially before you do any of, like, the movements?
Yeah, so it's actually part of it. And so while
Okay.
you're doing some of the breathing and some of the kind of core movements or kind of warming your body up, you're still inhaling and exhaling.
Mhm.
And so the way that you do it, if you're doing it's kind of a prep into like a teaser, you take a deep breath and then you exhale as you move further into that workout. It's also kind of a stretching routine. And so again, when I walk out of there, I feel like whatever I'm holding, it has been released during that workout.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so if you ever get the chance, go to Pilates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to have a studio years ago, not a Pilates studio, recording
Oh, I was gonna
studio,
say,
and I
wow.
had no, 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 no. No, no, I'm not that talented.
Okay,
I don't have
alright.
that many talents, Ashley. But but, no, I had a studio where I recorded clients, and, I had a client who was a Pilates instructor, and she did, like, these
Um,
audio, back then it was CDs. She would do these
yep.
CDs that she would sell. So she would record the whole movement. So she would like come into the studio,
Oh,
do the whole routine
love
and with a
that.
microphone and just talk through
Oh,
it. And it was
love
pretty
that.
cool. Like it looked
Yes.
pretty intense.
Yes. I think people think it is intense. It's intense. I'll just
Yeah.
name that. It's intense.
Yeah.
It's really intense. It's a different type of so I also kind of walk. I used to run, and then I aged and my knee said no.
Yeah.
But it's a different type of movement that again centers you and it creates a relaxation in your body and a tension that kind of relieves the same things that you may be holding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great modality if somebody
Yeah.
can utilize it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So just on the whole topic of emotional wellness,
Mhm.
um, there's often external factors to blame, right? There's things that people might point to outside of themselves that's causing maybe the way they're perceiving them. Do you think that people are their own worst enemies when it comes to mental health struggles? There's a lot of things that we can't control. You
Yeah.
talked about that,
Yeah.
but how does somebody tackle their issues if it's something external that's coming at them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I often tell people, you're in therapy to deal with people who won't go to therapy. And a lot of when I'm always excited when someone comes to therapy and they've never been, because that means that there is something in them that doesn't feel good any longer and they don't want to keep putting it off. And so I celebrate them the first session, and I'm grateful and honored that they're even choosing me or any therapist to open up and be in that space. So I think celebrating that is first and foremost. I think what people do is again they get to a point where they no longer feel well, whatever capacity that's in, whether it's mentally, whether it's physically, whether it's socially. There's something off here, and I need to go and get it fixed. I think it says a lot about that person's self awareness. So very much like going to a medical doctor, if I know that my knee hurts and I go to the doctor, I know that something's going to change. So it's the same case with a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I don't feel well in this capacity. This is going to help me. And so I'm very grateful when people recognize that. Again, it's usually because if there's some external factors. I think environment plays a very big part in how people show up for themselves. I'm from a low income area too. I grew up in the hood with a T on the end, and um, and 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 I often when I go back home, it takes me back to a nostalgic place with some
Yeah.
hard memories. And I recognize that some of the individuals where I'm from still suffer in certain areas because of the environment, not
Hmm.
because of the people, but because the environment can impact how they show up for themselves and others. So while I think that people can self sabotage, I think the environment is a big part of how they're seeing themselves in
Hmm.
an effort to dissuade them from doing something different or being something different or seeing something different.
You hit on something that's interesting there, and I never thought of the socioeconomic piece to this. So
Absolutely.
some people, especially in this country, in the U.S., people have very hard environments that they grow up in. It's
Yeah.
not everybody has the same, privileges
Yeah.
when they're growing up in
Yeah.
the areas that they come from.
Yeah.
So, how does somebody tackle that if everything's stacked against them? If they're living
Yeah.
in an area that's like low income and there's a lot of challenges,
Yeah.
financial challenges, personal
Yeah.
challenges, like
Yeah.
what can somebody do in that situation to try to fight against that?
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really hard. I think an individual has to want to do something different.
Mhm.
It's hard when there are not resources coming into it. And
Yeah.
so for mental health, sometimes it's hard to have access to it, especially in communities of color, lower
Yeah.
income areas, because there's a need, but there's a lack of let's say financial awareness or
Yeah.
financial stability or the resource to get someone qualified in to do that. I also think there is this stigma against mental health in certain areas that I don't tell anybody my business, and what happens in this home
Yeah.
stays in this home.
Right.
And so again, that same mind frame is becomes generational, and then
Mhm.
a lot of the trauma or the experiences are generational.
Do you think it's a two-tiered system? Like you're saying, there's not always quality care available. If somebody is on Medicaid or like SSI,
Yeah.
is the care that's available substandard?
So no,
No?
no, it's really not.
Okay.
So there are a
I'm
lot of
surprised to hear that. I would think it
yeah,
was the opposite.
yeah. So I think the thing is that people don't know that those resources are out there. There
Mhm.
are tons of community mental health agencies that are actually looking to provide support. Now, I can say that some of those clients who are in those positions who want to go to therapy may start and may not finish. And so then it becomes an issue because if Medicaid has allotted a certain amount of money to mental health and clients don't come or they don't know that it's available, then it is
Like a funding issue that it gets
yes.
cut off?
Yes, it becomes a funding issue or like a seesaw. We need it, but we had it and then we lost it. And so then it can become a funding issue. But many low income areas actually have community mental health agencies. I don't
Mhm.
think people talk about it enough to provide the opportunity for it to happen.
What's holding people back? Is it the stigma that's attached to that? So
Yes.
there's generational stigma that people don't wanna be seen. I mean, I know that, my father dealt with a lot of stuff growing up in, World War II Europe, and counseling was, like, off the table. Like, it was just not something that, you know what I mean? Hard exterior, didn't want anything to do with it. So I kinda relate to it on that level, that there's just people that have this stigma and they don't want anything to do with it because it's a sign of weakness and they don't want to show that. They want that hard exterior. Um, do you think that that plays a part in people not getting the help, or is it maybe bad marketing on the part of the agencies not reaching out to people? What do you think is the barrier there?
Yep, I think it's all of it. So I think the disconnect is that the agencies are not recruiting or
Okay.
visible.
Mhm.
I think that that's a part of it. I also think again it's generational. Again, you don't tell anybody what happens in this family. Therapy, you have to tell. You have to be honest. You
Yeah.
have to talk. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes people feel a lack of trust because, again, more specifically in communities of color, therapy was created not for us, and so it's hard for individuals to not see something created for them, to trust in the system that's
Yeah.
not created for them. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's a big part of the disconnect, especially for communities of color, but
Yep.
also low income areas. If you see a therapist with a Lexus, it's going to be hard for you to relate to me.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so I
Makes a
think
lot of
that that's
sense.
a big part of the disconnect. I can't trust you. I don't feel like you can relate to me. You may not have gone through this thing. When
Yep.
if we literally just sat down, you would see I don't have a Lexus. For me
Yeah.
personally, I
Yeah.
have a doctorate. I don't have a Lexus. I
Mhm.
grew up in a single family home. My
Mhm.
father was an alcoholic. All these generational traumas that I had to be privy to and aware of in order to change that so that my children can be semi healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Talk about physical health. You touched on it earlier.
yeah,
Obviously, it's a huge piece to mental well-being.
mhm,
You emphasized how much exercise changes your day,
yeah.
and when you don't exercise, you don't feel the same. And I know what you mean. There's that nice endorphin rush
Yes,
you get when you move your
yes,
body.
yes.
Um, can you have mental health and physical health? Like, can you have one without the other?
I want to say yes. I don't think
Mhm.
so.
Okay.
I think that I think if you are mentally well, you understand that there's something that your body needs in order to
Mhm.
feel whole and complete.
Yeah.
And if you're physically well, you know that there's something that that your mental and capacity and emotional space needs in order to again feel well. So to me, I think they go hand in hand. I think the clients that I see or the people that I see, they do some sort of physical activity. They may not have a hit workout, but they do move. They
Mhm.
may be more sexually active. They may eat differently. But I think because wellness encompasses all those facets, I think there's an understanding that if I go to therapy, I do other things different in my life so that I'm whole completely.
I agree with you, and I mean, a sedentary lifestyle just creates issues as you get
Yes.
older. Like, you
Yes.
can't we're all sitting at desks, well,
Yes.
most of us, or a lot of us, I should say,
Yes.
not everybody, but
Yep.
depends on the nature of your work, but sitting at a desk all day does not do your body justice. We weren't
No.
designed to sit at desks and look
No.
at computer screens for
No.
8, 10, 12,
Yep.
13 hours a
Yeah.
day,
Yep.
and, I just think I don't know if there's a lack of motivation in people, or there's a spirit of laziness, but there's
Yeah.
something that keeps people from being more physically active in this country, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I wouldn't say lazy. I
Uh-huh.
would say I think there's a lack of motivation. I
Mhm.
also think that people don't realize how significant movement will impact their aging process.
Right.
And I don't think a lot of people know that because it's not talked about in capacity the way that it should be.
Mhm.
And so I think doctors are saying it, but if you don't go to the doctor, you wouldn't know to do it.
Mhm.
And so again, I think when the individual realizes how important their physical health is, they also are attuned to their mental well-being. And I think it's a vice versa effect.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Talk about cognitive behavior therapy, Ashley. I know that
Yeah.
you use it. How
Yeah.
successful has it been for you, and how does it work?
Yeah, so CPT is a I think it can be very easy. I also think it can be complex. Because what happens is you have to change your thinking and then you can change your behavior.
Mhm.
And so I often when I do my kind of inquiries or my consultations with people before they choose me as a therapist, I often say if you change your thinking around money, then you change your behavior around it. So if you grow up in a home where you see money as fleeting, it comes, it goes, I don't have to save, I don't have to invest, then that's how you live kind of your financial life.
Yeah.
Once you then learn that money is a tool to both spend and save and invest, then you start to change your behavior around it. And that's the scope of CBT. It's essentially I'm changing my thinking around this, so then I change my behavior around it. I think with a lot of us, we have to get us to a place where we feel confident in changing our thinking around it. So it's
Mhm.
unlearning something and then relearning something. As adults, that can be really complicated because this is all I know for such a long time.
Mhm.
But then as you get older, you also become wiser and I don't want to think like this anymore. How
Yeah.
do I adjust this so that I can be better in this capacity?
I don't have a good history with it. I used to battle insomnia many, many years ago, and I remember I
Yes.
went to a cognitive behavior therapist,
Yeah.
and it sucked.
Yeah.
Okay, for me.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
judging it on another
Yeah.
level. You're applying
Yeah.
it in a totally different way, and
Yep.
I'm not gonna judge how you apply it,
Yeah.
and if it works for you for your clients, then that's fantastic. Are you familiar with it used in a insomnia application?
So I'm not. The thing too
Okay.
is though, Mike, is that I'm a therapist that works with the client based on what they need.
Okay.
And a big approach, I use CBT because they taught it to me. I also
Yeah.
use it in a non traditional approach. One of my favorite approaches is called narrative therapy. And that's an approach where I empower you to see sleep in a way that makes you feel better and
Mhm.
easier. And
Okay.
so, what about this midnight hour do you struggle with? Why are you up
Yeah.
at 2 o'clock? How about we create a bedtime routine that keeps you sleep all night? And
Yeah.
so for me, narrative therapy gives you a different way to look at things. CBT feels so structured.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should have called you years ago, because because the guy he was great. He was a nice guy. But it was like a sleep limitation
Yeah.
thing. I'm trying to remember it because it was
Yeah.
years ago. So it was like, I only want you to go to bed at 11 and get up at 2 and do that for one night. And
Yeah.
then the next night would be 3. And
Yeah.
he's like, and you're gonna be miserable for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm already hating this,
I
right?
already
I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
dude,
yeah.
I'm here because I can't sleep. I
Yep.
don't want to
I don't want
intentionally
to yeah.
not sleep,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
like, I think I tried it for like 2 nights and I was ready to like, I was gonna climb the walls. I was going
Yeah.
out of my mind.
Yeah.
And so I had to stop.
Yeah.
So I guess I just have this negative attitude towards every time I hear it. But in describing the way you might apply it, it sounds like it has a lot of practical application.
Yeah. It to me it does. I also think that
Does your dog want to say hi?
she
Is that what's happening
does.
here?
She does.
Can we see him?
Come here, Jinx. She has she has some
Okay.
paper. She found some paper.
Okay.
So that's why. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. It's all good. It's
um
all good.
yeah,
Live podcasting, Ashley.
yeah, live podcasting.
There you go.
So I do have a different approach because also again as a woman of color, understanding how these theories were not created for us, I try to
Hmm.
remix them based on how
Okay.
my client feels in that moment.
Okay.
So that I think that works better because I feel like clients trust me because I work for them and not for the theory.
Right. So you said they weren't created for people of color.
Yeah.
Talk about that. What brought you to that conclusion?
Yeah, so a lot of the theories, CBT, somatic, narrative,
Hmm.
existential, they were created by white men.
Right.
And so they were created in an effort to fix their individuals. And so they're culturally aligned with the standard that does not apply to everyone. And
Okay.
so as a therapist who works primarily with communities of color, I
Hmm.
took these, and a lot of us do this a lot, and I'm honored to be among. I think there are like 25,000 Black therapists in the country. There are more
Hmm.
than that, but I'm in a community with that many. We
Hmm.
take these theories and we apply them to our cultural basis, and so a CBT approach may not work in this capacity for an African American man because
Yeah.
he may see racial trauma as something very different than a white man would. And so,
Yeah.
how does this theory align with this issue? And how do I work it so that the client feels safe to adjust the behavior,
Hmm.
despite how this theory is taught to us in this academic space?
Hmm.
And a lot of therapists, to me, if they're good, they can take the theory and remix it according to the client that they're serving.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what I think a good therapist would do.
I think so too. Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
if you see something that just doesn't align across like
Hmm.
across a different culture of
Hmm.
people,
Hmm.
you have to make those modifications.
Absolutely.
Have you had to make a have you had to make a lot of those? Is that your dog barking?
She's
Bring her
something else
up.
right
Can
now.
we see her?
She is not. She does not like the camera. Come here,
She
girl.
doesn't.
She
Okay.
does not like the camera.
Okay.
She's my bodyguard though, so I think
I
somebody's
got you.
dropping something off, and she's like, "Who's
Yeah.
at the door?" The door is all
Okay.
the way in the front, so you're okay. You're okay, James. You're okay.
Sounds like she wants to be on.
She does. I'm right. Um, sorry. What was your question?
Yeah. No, it's okay. It's okay. These little tangents are fun.
Yeah.
Um No, what I was gonna say was how hard is it to modify CBT when you're trying to make it culturally relevant, like to communities of color?
Yes, I think again for me, it's really how do I remix it based on this situation. And so again, if it's money related, how do we unlearn this thing about money? With couples, it's harder because there are two people that you're trying to get them to unlearn something and then relearn something. So you just use a different approach for them. Emotionally focused couples therapy created by Susan Johnson, who's not a woman of color, but the theory applies because what it does is it helps to de-escalate conflict. I work with high conflict couples. So that theory works because how do we take this conflict and de-escalate it so that when it comes up again, we now have tools around it. So I think again the theories work, but again it depends on the couple that you're serving and what works for them. So I think remixing all of them, I know that I use narrative in a therapy session and a CBT sometimes, or I somatic approach. Well, let's take some deep breathing together. So I think it really just depends on what's happening in the therapeutic space and what the client needs at that moment.
Okay. You
Mhm.
talked about narrative therapy. You
Yeah.
just mentioned it again. What is that?
Yep. So it's basically a storytelling approach. So just think about being a narrator,
Mhm.
how what your story looks like and how you can change it. I often say you're the author of your story, and so if chapter 35 looks one way, how can we get chapter 36 to look very different? What do you need to feel empowered to change that behavior and that thinking and that mind frame and that motivation so that this now new chapter of your life looks different? I really do it around birthdays. Okay,
Okay.
35 look this way. What can 36 look like for you?
Yeah.
And so for me, that is actually my favorite approach because the client is the author of their story. I'm just the publisher trying to get them to adjust it.
Are they narrating or are you?
They're doing all the talking. They're doing
They're
all the
doing all the talking?
storytelling. My job is to be a podcaster. What do you need?
Okay.
So I ask a lot of questions and allow them to create the story or allow them to think differently about whatever it is that needs empowering. And so for the person who may be struggling with their supervisor, okay, what's stopping you from going to talk to them? This is your job. What do you want it to look like? How can you talk to your supervisor about what that looks like for you and them so that
Mhm.
you both are getting what you need from the professional environment?
How often does the client start going off the rails and you have to rein them back in? Does that happen a lot with narrative therapy?
Yeah,
You're
great
smiling, so it
question.
sounds like it happens a lot.
Great,
Is that right?
great question. Ironically, it happened this week.
Okay.
And the client said, "I know I'm
I
all
shouldn't
over
be
the place."
laughing, right?
No, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Laugh because it's helpful for me.
Okay.
And what I call it
Walk
is
us
kind of
through it, Ashley. Tell
yeah.
us.
So a client will come to this space and they'll talk about this, and then I ask the question, then it leads here, and then it leads
Mhm,
there, and then it leads there, and then they come back to where they started. And they're like, I know I'm all over the place. And for
yeah.
me, that's the book. That is your story. Okay, how do we center it so that it aligns with what you're needing right now? And so I again, I'm very honored that I'm chosen to do that. And so for
Mhm,
me, I get to, okay, so what's in the middle of all of this? You just went took us in this circle. What's in the middle of this circle that's causing you to spiral in this effect? And I don't know if this is going to be visual or not, but kind of my hand movement. So that's essentially what it looks like. And so
okay.
for me, narrative therapy in that instance is when someone is off the rail, you give them that space to do that. Ask
Mhm,
them a question to help them bring it back to, oh, well, this is really what it is.
yeah, okay. So Ashley, how can people get more familiar with you, with who you are, and
Oh,
contact you if they're interested in your services?
yeah, so my website is www.gilmorecounseling.com.
Mhm.
I'm licensed in North Carolina, Texas, and Maryland, and I'm on the verge of some other states. I'm on Instagram at Get Real with Ash G and Facebook Gilmore Counseling and Consulting Services. And I don't ever want to tell people to Google me, but I guess you can Google me.
That's great.
Yeah.
We'll include in the show notes Dr. Ashley Gilmore. Thanks so much for spending time with us today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it.
And that'll do it for this edition. Drop us a comment and tell us what you think of the episode and share some self care rituals in your life. What do you do to escape the busyness and to de stress? We want to hear from you guys and always check us out at mikecpodcast.com. Until next time, bye, everybody.